Hey guys, I'm so sorry for being a couple of minutes late to this week's episode of Talking Social. I'm having a few issues with the software that I typically use that I can screen share, and it's not working properly today, so I'm just going to do this directly from Facebook instead. The only hitch is it means that some of the examples that I wanted to show you guys of good copy versus bad copy, I won't be able to share my screen, but we can talk through those a little bit. And then, of course, if folks want to have a look at those examples, I'm also happy to share those after the live stream is over as well. So today we're going to talk all about copy. So we've been talking a lot recently about content, why it is important to have a content strategy, what a content strategy looks like, and a key component of a content strategy is your copy. So what I want to talk about today is what is copy? What do we mean when we talk about copy? How does it fit into your larger content strategy? Why does copy matter? I want to share a few tips to help you instantly improve your copy or give you some tips to get started if you feel like you often struggle with creating copy. And then, of course, as I usually do, I've got a freebie for you guys this week. It's just a little checklist that you can use when you are creating your copy to run through and help you to improve, because I'll talk to you guys a little bit about what good copy looks like, what I would expect to see from good copy. So let me just grab a sip of water here and then we'll get started. All right, so first up, what exactly is copy and how does this fit into your larger content strategy? And remember, one of the key components of, I'm so sorry guys, I think I have dog hair on my face because we have 3, and so it's just everywhere in everything we do. And our husky is shedding at the moment, which means our house is just, I could knit a sweater from all of the dog hair that we have at the moment. I could probably knit a sweater a day at the rate that he's shedding. So copy is, going back to what I was saying, so content marketing is a part of a larger social selling strategy, right? And that's really what my business is focused on, is creating social selling strategies. So there are a handful of components to a social selling strategy: branding, content marketing, email marketing, social media marketing. Copy is a component of your content marketing. So the Google definition of copy reads, in advertising, web marketing, and similar fields, copy refers to the output of copywriters who are employed to write material which encourages consumers to buy goods or services. That is a very technical definition. If you want a television example, you can look at Mad Men, right? They had copywriters a lot back in the 1960s heydays of advertising. The way that I view copy is a little bit broader. I view copy as any written text that is a component of your, or makes up part of your content strategy, right? So it can be an Instagram post. It could be a script that you write for a video. It could be a blog post. It could be notes for a podcast that you do. All of that is copy in some way, shape, or form, right? So it falls under that banner of copy. At least that's how I tend to look at it. It's any written words that make up a part that, or that tie back to your brand, right? So all of the text you have on your website, copy. The captions on your Instagram posts, copy. Facebook posts, copy, right? All of that is copy. The preview that I put up for you guys of what this week's Talking Social episode would be, that's copy. All of that is copy in one way, shape, or form. So your content strategy, going back to some of what we've talked about over the past couple of weeks, is the way that you get people to know, like, and trust you, right? You're using the content that you are putting out to reach the right people at the right point in their buyer journey with you. Your copy is a key component of that, and it plays a major role because your copy is going to be the mechanism in your content strategy that you use to pull people into you and to get them to know, like, trust you, and ultimately want to buy from you. And that's really the key to being successful with marketing, to being successful with sales, right? Is you need to be able to pull people in at the right point. You need to get them to know you so that they understand what your brand is. They know who you are. They recognize what you're putting out when they see things from you. They learn to like you, right? They enjoy engaging with you. They enjoy the content that you're putting out. Eventually they come to trust you, and that's the point at which you can ask for the sale, right? Without that know, like, trust relationship, it's really, really challenging to get people to want to buy from you, because people want to buy from people that they feel comfortable with, that they like, that they know they can trust. And your content strategy is how you build that know, like, trust relationship, and your copy is the mechanism that you use to drive a lot of your content strategy. Okay, so that's kind of a summary of what copy is, at least in the way that I approach it, and how it fits into your overall content strategy. So we talked a little bit just then too about why copy is so important, right? And I cannot understate the criticality of being able to write good copy that represents your brand well and communicates the message that you want to communicate to your audience, right? Because without good copy, without copy that resonates with your audience, you're not going to be able to build that know, like, trust relationship. So if you guys follow me on Instagram, you will have seen earlier in the week, I've done a few posts this week talking about copy and why it's so important. And one of the ones I posted, I think on Monday, says good copy can make your brand, bad copy can break your brand. And please feel free to insert a good breaking bad joke here. I love a good breaking bad joke, so I'm all for that. But this is really true. If you can teach yourself, because writing good copy is a skill that can be learned just like any other. If you can teach yourself how to write good copy, right, that speaks to your brand, that tells the story that you want it to, because success in marketing these days is all about telling a story, you are going to be able to successfully build your brand on that copy. If you don't learn how to write good copy, or you feel like you can just fall back on some other strengths that you have and not develop good copy for your brand, whether it's on your website or in your blog posts or on your Instagram captions, that can break your brand, because you're not building that know, like, trust relationship. You don't have that mechanism to move people through that process. So I cannot overemphasize how important it is to get comfortable writing copy and to learn how to write copy well, so that you can use that in your content strategy to put people through that know, like, trust relationship process. Sorry guys, it's a little hot in Northern Virginia today. All right, so let's talk then a little bit about some of the components that I look for in good copy. And there are three that I really want to emphasize with you. So the first is, oh, hey, Kenny, thanks so much for joining. Your copy is the one who knocks. Yes, you are exactly right. I love that. That's a great way to look at it. So there are three things I really want to emphasize with you guys that I look for when I'm sort of analyzing copy, when I'm writing it for my clients, when I'm writing it for my own business. It's also how typically when I see posts or items that I want to engage with, they often meet these three criteria. So the first one is that it engages your audience, okay? So the copy that you're writing, the first thing that it has to do is it has to be geared towards the target audience that you are trying to reach. You can have the most eloquently written blog post or Instagram caption in the world, but if it is not geared towards your target audience, it doesn't matter. It has to speak to them. So that means that the words that you choose, the tone that you use, everything in that piece of copy that you are creating needs to speak directly to your target audience. And this is why I always talk about how important it is to understand who you're trying to reach down to the nitty-gritty details, right? There's no detail that is too small when it comes to understanding your target audience. So make sure that if you haven't, that you spend some time honing in on who is it that you are trying to reach, right? Who is the client that is going to love buying from you if you can just get in front of them. So make sure that you know who your target client or customer is, so that when you are crafting your copy, you know exactly the tone to strike, the phrases to use, the words to use, right? My target audience at a very high level, right? I'm targeting small business owners and entrepreneurs, right? And my brand and the types of small business owners and entrepreneurs that I want to reach, I typically go for a more fun, kind of casual, relaxed appeal, right? Because that's what works for the clients that I want to be able to reach and get in front of. So my copy, my blog posts, my Instagram captions, everything that I write, I just overhauled my website because I wanted my copy to better speak to the audience that I'm trying to reach. So make sure you understand who your target audience is and that you are writing your copy to speak to them. The second component of good copy is that early on in it, whether it is a one paragraph Instagram caption or a 7-paragraph blog post, early on you give your target audience an incentive to stay engaged. Okay, so this is all about pulling them in, right? I'm trying to think back to high school English, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think they used to refer to this as the hook, right? You have to hook your reader in. You have so little time on social media, online, to pull people into you and to convince them to continue on that journey that you want them to take, whether it is taking an action on a Facebook ad or filling out a form on your website. So you have got to make sure that you have some sort of great incentive to get them to continue that journey with you. So there are a lot of ways that you can go about building an incentive that is going to get people to want to continue on that journey with you. You could say something that demonstrates that you guys have something in common, right? You understand what they are going through. You've been there yourself. You can help. It could be a discount. It could be there are so many different ways that you can go about creating that incentive. A lot of it is going to depend on the copy that you are creating. Is it a blog post? Is it a Facebook ad? Is it an Instagram caption? But you've got to give them a reason to continue engaging with you. Maybe it's a statistic that's really going to fascinate your target audience. Whatever it is, make sure it's something that's going to get them to continue with you. And then the last component, the third component, is you have to make sure that you have and when I say clear, I mean absolutely crystal clear call to action, one that you probably repeat a couple of times, right? It is no good writing beautiful copy, writing amazing, inspiring copy if you do not have a call to action. You always need to have a call to action in the copy that you are creating, right? Because you want people to move through that process with you. You want them to go from a Facebook ad to your website. You want them to go from an Instagram post that they saw in their feed to your shop. You need to make sure that you end on a very, very clear call to action. And don't assume that just because I see this a lot with Facebook ads especially, people assume that because there is a link in the ad that people are going to know to click that link. Do not rely on that. Even if it seems really obvious what action they are supposed to take next, call it out in your copy. Preferably call it out a couple of times. Click this link below to go get your discount, right? Click the link below to go read the full blog post. Click the link below to go watch my video about XYZ. Make sure whatever action you want them to take, that it is very, very clear. Okay, so those are really the three key components that I look for and that I try to follow when I am creating copy, right? So you want to make sure that you engage your audience. You are speaking to your target audience, and that's where it becomes really important to know who you are targeting. Make sure that you're giving them an incentive very early on to continue. Because remember, we don't have long to pull people in, to hook them into us, and to get them to continue on this journey with our copy. And then make sure you end on a very, very, very clear call to action, right? You have them taking some sort of next step with you, whatever that might be. Okay? All right, I'm going to grab another sip of water here, and then we are going to talk about some tactics that you guys can utilize to instantly improve your copy or help you get started if you're really struggling with creating copy. Okay. All right, so I shared some of these earlier on a Facebook post in the week, but I want to just sort of expand on them a little bit more for you guys. And I also added in a couple, I think, to add a little bit more clarity and just give you guys some more tools that you can use when you're creating your own copy. Because I think, and I'll get to this later with one of the tactics that I talk about, but I think writing copy intimidates a lot of people, and it really doesn't need to. So I want to give you guys some tools so that you feel like you can go away knowing that you can start on the journey to creating good copy, because it is such a key part of your marketing or of your success in marketing. So the first thing is, stop relying so heavily on adjectives and on buzzwords. And I'm guilty of this. I definitely know that I overuse gorgeous and fabulous and probably a few other things in my Instagram posts especially. It's something that I'm trying to be more aware of and rely less heavily on. Adjectives do serve their purpose. They definitely have a place in writing. They definitely have a place in copy. But I think overall, we are far, far too reliant on adjectives and cool buzzwords to do the heavy lifting in our copy, right? And adjectives just are not strong enough to do that heavy lifting because they don't paint a clear picture for the reader. So I did a blog post this week that goes through all of these tactics that I'm going to share with you guys. And in it, I compared adjectives to being like sprinkles on a cake, right? They lend a nice little bit of extra panache and snaz to that cake, but you know that everybody's really eating that cake for the frosting. So you can't ask adjectives, you can't ask those sprinkles to try to do the job of frosting because they just can't. So, pun intended, you sprinkle them into your writing, but you can't rely on them to do the job of telling your story. And along with adjectives come these buzzwords that I see in way too many posts every single day. Slay, swoon-worthy. I mean, you guys, we could go all day listing words like that just drive me crazy because they're in practically every single post that I read on Instagram. And here's what happens when we are all using the exact same words. Like, I swear, if I read one more Instagram post with swoon-worthy, I'm gonna have to go have a big glass of wine to deal with it. The problem is when we are all using the exact same words, all of our copy looks exactly the same. And it is already hard enough to stand out in a very crowded online market. Do not make it harder for yourself by writing copy that looks just like everybody else's. Not only that, but telling me that something is swoon-worthy doesn't tell me anything about that product or about the service that you offer. Like, what does that mean? What am I supposed to take away from that? So we have to stop relying on these buzzwords that we think people want to hear, because that's not what we want, right? What people want is a story. They want to feel an emotional connection to something. And saying that something is gorgeous and fabulous and amazing and swoon-worthy does not create that emotional connection. So just be really aware when you're writing copy about how heavily you're relying on adjectives or on some of those buzzwords. And if you notice a trend, if you see that you're using them a lot in your writing, then I would challenge you guys to do a couple of things. The first would be to write a couple of paragraphs about a product or a service that you offer, and you can use no more than 5 adjectives total in those 2 to 3 paragraphs. Another thing you can do, and this is in the checklist that I'm going to give to you guys after this live session, is you can take a piece of copy that you have written, take a piece of content, right? And cut the number of adjectives that you have in it in half, and see how that improves your writing by just removing those adjectives and encouraging yourself to tell the story in a different way that doesn't rely on things like gorgeous and swoon-worthy. So that's tip number 1. Let's move on to number 2 then. Number 2 is probably my favorite because this is something that I try really, really hard to do in my own business because it is so important, and that is to serve your audience. Okay, so what do I mean by this? When you are creating copy, it's really easy to start writing that copy from your perspective, right? What would you want to see, or what matters to you? What words would you use that you like? But at the end of the day, you are not here, you are not running your business, you are not writing that piece of copy to serve you. You are writing it to serve your audience. So you need to make sure that every aspect of your copy is doing something to help serve your audience. It is speaking to your audience, and it is delivering value in some way directly to them. I equate this a little bit to my work in IT consulting. So the IT consulting world is a very crowded one. And I see a lot of IT firms, nearly everyone that I can think of, make the same fatal mistake, right? All of their marketing material, all of their sales conversations focus on how good they are as a company, right? It's things like, we have the most amazing talent. You've got to work with us because we have the best software, right? Our technology is better than anybody else's. Whatever it might be, it is all focused on how good or how much better the company is. But if you are a potential client sitting across the table, that doesn't mean anything to you. I don't care if you have the best team. I don't care if your software is cooler or has more gadgets than everybody else's. You need to tell me what you can do for me. And if you are focusing your marketing, if you're focusing your copy on your differentiators and what makes you great, you're not serving your audience, you're not addressing their needs, and you're not speaking to them. So you need to make sure that when you're writing copy, you are constantly asking yourself, how is this serving my audience? How is this delivering value to my audience? And that value can come in a lot of different ways. And again, it's going to be very dependent on the copy that you're writing, right? An Instagram post is much shorter than, say, a blog post. So the value that I deliver in a blog post is probably going to be more significant than I deliver in an Instagram post. But even in an Instagram post, I can give something to the audience that I'm trying to reach, right? I can give them a tip to help improve their Facebook ads. I can share with them a statistic that may help them to realize they need to be blogging, or they need to be using Facebook ads, or they need to be writing better copy, whatever it might be. So there are lots of different ways that you can serve value to your audience, but you need to make sure that when you're creating copy, you are constantly asking how you are serving your audience with that piece of copy, because you always need to keep that front of mind. You always need to be thinking about your audience first and foremost and what they want to hear. So let's move on to the third. Oh, before we do that, let me give you guys a quick tip for how you can do this if this is something that you struggle with. If you struggle with making sure that every piece of copy you're putting out there serves your audience in a way. And I published a blog post on this today, guys. So if you go to my website, Couch Digital Strategies, and you just click over to the blog, it'll be the first one that shows up there. So in it, I include a little challenge for you for each of these tactics that I'm giving to you today, so that you can get better with each of these tactics and start utilizing them in your own copywriting efforts. So what I would encourage you guys to do if you struggle with making sure that your content is always serving value to your audience, pull some piece of copy that you've created recently for a product or service that you sell. So it could be a description on your website, maybe it's a post about it, maybe it's a Facebook share, whatever it might be. And ask yourself these questions, and this is kind of what we were just talking about. How does this serve my audience? What value am I delivering while pitching my offers? So when you are selling, you want to make sure that you are still giving some sort of value without any expectation of getting something in return. And that makes a big difference in sales pitches, right? If I listen to 2 sales pitches and they're identical, except one person gave me something in that pitch for free without any expectation of getting something and one person didn't, I know who I'm buying from. And then ask yourself, what about that content or copy would make your target audience want to buy it from you? So it's really just about practicing in your writing, making sure that you are constantly thinking about how you are serving your audience with it. Okay, so let's move on to the third one then. And that is to tell a story that connects to your brand. So marketing today is all about telling a story. And I talk a lot about the need to build a real authentic brand. I'm so sorry, guys. I clearly did not drink enough water before I did this live stream because I'm parched. So I talk a lot about the need to create a real authentic brand because it is so important to consumers today, especially for any of you out there who want to target millennials and younger generations. Authenticity in a brand is the second most important thing that we look for, because I'm a millennial myself, just after discounts. We love our discounts. So you've got to be making sure that you're constantly cultivating that real and authentic brand, and your content and your copy is a huge part of that, because that is how you tell your story to your target client, to your target customer, right? And when you're telling that story, what you're doing is crafting a world for them that demonstrates how working with you or how buying from you is going to make their life tangibly better. This is how you're slowly moving them through that know, like, trust relationship building process, rather than trying to force them from the introduction to the sale. So you are creating this world for them that demonstrates that working with you, that buying from you is somehow going to improve their life, right? Maybe it's less stressful. They're going to have better style. They're going to have better skin. Their social media is going to improve. Whatever it might be, you have to craft that narrative for them and use your copy and your content to convince them that you can deliver that value. And you are going to get so much more by creating that vision from them than if you try to scream from the mountaintops about how amazing it is to work with you, right? Because saying, it's amazing if you work with me, my brand is amazing, my stuff is amazing, my products are amazing, you are not building for that person a clear narrative about what is so amazing about working with you. And that's where your copy and your content come into play, right? And that is how you build that vision for them. You never want to be screaming at people, whether it's in person or it's in marketing and sales, right? Marketing and sales is all about subtly building that relationship to ultimately get to the point where those people want to buy from you. So if this is something that you struggle with, if you're kind of stuck with, I don't know how to connect my copy to my larger story, I don't know how to create this narrative for my audience, what I would challenge you guys to do is to make a list of the benefits that people receive from working with you, right? These are your differentiators. What do you do, or what will people get from working with you that nobody else can deliver? And it's really important that you understand those for a few reasons. One, you need to know what separates you from your competition. But two, making this list of benefits is going to help you build out a broader strategy to create that narrative for people, right? To craft for them that world in which they can see how their life is going to be demonstrably better by working with you or by buying from you. So make that list of benefits that people will receive from working with you, and then write a piece of copy where you openly call out some of those benefits, okay? This is the shouting from the mountaintops tactic, okay? So I want you to just in big bold letters say, your life's gonna be amazing if you buy from me. I'm gonna give you so much cool stuff if you buy from me. Take that list of benefits, take that screaming piece of copy, and I want you to rewrite it in a way where you just interweave a few of those benefits into a larger story about your brand. Okay, so you could talk about how you came to start your company, why you started your company. You can talk about how you came to decide to launch a particular product. You can talk about your journey as a business owner. But I want you to tell a larger story and just interweave those benefits into it, right? So you're taking that shouting from the mountaintop and you're turning it into a more subtle story that connects to your larger brand. All right, so let's move on to number 4 then. And I love this one because this is something that I was definitely very guilty of when I first started creating copy and content. Don't try so hard, okay? This seems counterintuitive at first, I know, right? Because first of all, most of us, unless you're fortunate to be one of those people that doesn't care, we want to be liked. We want people to like us. We want people to follow us. We want people to buy from us. And if we want people to buy from us, shouldn't we be trying hard to put our best foot forward? So let me break down what I mean by don't try so hard. Oftentimes, our desire to be liked means that we spend too much of our time focused on convincing people to like us. And when we try that hard, we sort of lose our unique voice in favor of just pulling in words and phrases that we think people want to hear. And this kind of spills over into the first tactic, right, where we need to reduce our reliance on adjectives and buzzwords. So many people use the words like swoon-worthy and slay because they think that's what people want to hear, right? They think that if they use those phrases, people are going to like them and they're going to buy from them. But what happens oftentimes is you end up looking like you are trying too hard in your copywriting. And so much of marketing and selling, even though you are trying really hard, is making it look like you're not trying that hard, like this is happening naturally. So scale back, take a deep breath and keep this in mind. You do not need everyone to like you. In some ways, it's a good thing if everybody doesn't like you when it comes to building your business. I don't want them to actively or openly hate you, but you don't need everybody to engage with you. You just need the target audience that you are trying to reach to engage with you. That is the only audience that matters. So we have to stop trying to convince everybody on the big wide internet to like us and start focusing on doing things that get our target audience to like us, because that is a much narrower audience and it makes it much easier to steer clear of some of these pitfalls, like constantly using the word swoon-worthy. So if this is something that you struggle with, if you find it really, really hard to write copy, or you find yourself falling back on things like slay and swoon-worthy, I'm sorry I keep using those as examples. I know there are others, but swoon-worthy is definitely one of my pet peeves. Then here's what I want you to do. Pick a topic that you'd like to do a Facebook or an Instagram post for, whichever platform you prefer, whichever one you're on. Don't focus on getting it, quote unquote, just right, on making it perfect for that platform, on making it super cool and hip and everybody's gonna love it. Instead, I want you to write that post as if you're just having a casual conversation with a friend. That's it, okay? So you can say it out loud if that's easier for you, or get a friend who you can trust with this and do it that way. But no fluffing it up for social media. Just go through it like you're having that casual, normal conversation with a friend, and see how that looks different from some of those posts where you've maybe tried really hard to get it to be what looks just right for social media. All right? So let's move on to the next one then. And this is where, for those of you who struggle with copy or struggle to start writing copy, or maybe haven't implemented a content strategy because you don't know where to start with copywriting, this one is for you. You just have to start. So I talked about at the beginning of this live stream about how learning how to write copy well is just like any other skill set. And it really is. It is just like learning to ride a bike or learning how to swim or any other skill development or any other skill that we can learn, right? There's no great mystery about how you get really good at writing copy. There's no curtain to pull back or anything like that. People that are good at writing copy are good at writing copy because they practice all the time. And the way that they started practicing was one day they sat down and they just started writing copy. That's how I learned to write copy. I just sat down and I forced myself to do it, even when it was hard, even when it felt horribly unnatural to me, even when it took me 2 hours once to write an Instagram post, but I just started doing it, and I started doing a little bit every day, right? So I would work on a blog post, or I'd write a couple of Instagram captions, or I'd write a Facebook post, or I'd draft up an email to my list, right? I forced myself every single day to write at least a little bit of copy, because getting good at writing copy is all about practice. It's all about building up those muscles, right? Getting some biceps on your copywriting abilities. That is all that it is. And the way that you do that is to just sit down, force yourself to get some copy out, even if it's horrible. Do not worry if the first few things that you create are truly abysmal. Nobody's ever going to see that, so there's nobody around to judge you. And that is the only way that you can get yourself started onto the path of writing good copy. You just have to start, and then you have to commit to at least a few days a week creating some sort of copy, right? It does not need to be a full blog post. It does not need to be a full email blast to your list. It doesn't have to be an ebook. It can be an Instagram caption. It can be a start of a blog post. You just have to force yourself each and every day to do a little bit. In the blog post, I compare this to one of my high school basketball coaches. So when I was in high school, I had a coach who convinced us that we could never go more than 2 days without a practice the entire season, no matter what. And our season was like October through March. So that meant during spring break, it meant during winter break, we were expected to go no more than 2 days without having a basketball practice. And I thought this was totally crazy when he first told us that we were going to have to do this, right? Because I had very much this attitude of, I've been playing basketball for years, I'm young, I'm in shape, I can go 4 or 5 days and it's not going to change how I play, right? Because he was convinced that if you went more than 2 days without a practice, you were going to lose some of your fitness, you were going to lose some of your finesse. And I thought this was total rubbish. And then I can still to this day very distinctly remember the first few practices that I showed up to on Monday. So we'd had our 2-day break, and I'd show up on the Monday, and sprints felt so much harder. I shouldn't say so much harder. I could still do them because I was 17 at the time, but they felt harder than they had when we had done them on the Friday. So there is definitely validation to the idea that the longer you go without practicing a skill set, the harder it is going to be. So even if you guys can only find 5 or 10 minutes in a day to practice this, just make sure that you're setting aside some time, a few times a week, to practice your copywriting capabilities, because that is what is going to make you a better writer. It is the only thing that is going to ultimately make you a better writer. There are other guiding principles and things that you can use to help improve, but practice is the number one thing that you have to do. All right, so let's talk about the last one then. So this came from a book that I am reading at the moment called Everybody Writes, and it's all about how to write better copy for your content, and specifically geared towards the online world that we live in. And in it, the author makes a great point that we cannot get attached to our first drafts, right? Because good good copy does not occur in the first draft. It occurs in the third draft, in the fourth draft, in the 10th draft sometimes. So we can't get attached to that first effort that we put down on paper, that we put down in an Instagram post or in a note in our phone. We have to be able to read our drafts and edit harshly, right? We have to edit unemotionally. And that's hard because we all, to some extent, get attached to what we create. And when we write copy, we are creating something. So a couple of things that you guys can do to help with this. So the first is always take a break after you write your first draft, right? So put your draft down and then close your computer, close your notebook, go have a cup of coffee, go take a walk around the block, go for lunch. Just take a break from it, step back, and give yourself a little bit of time to just get your energy levels back up, and to be away from that piece of coffee, from that piece of copy. So take a break in whatever way you want to, and come back to that piece of copy in a couple of hours, or even the next day if you want to, and then try editing it after you've had that little bit of separation period. And then the next thing I want you to try to do is try to channel your high school English teacher. So I loved English. I was, generally speaking, a really good English student. To be honest, I was generally speaking a great student because I loved school, super nerdy, but whatever. But I can still, to this day, I had one English teacher in particular in high school, and even though I did well in her class ultimately, I remember getting my papers back and there was just red pen all over it, right? And I was like, oh God, and I tried so hard and whatnot. And it kind of crushes your soul a little bit when you first get it back. But reflecting on it then and reflecting on it years later, I realized that a lot of that pushed me to be a better writer. So I want you guys to try to channel your high school English teacher, right? Take out that red pen, print out your copy if you wrote it on your computer, and edit as unemotionally as you can, right? You have to pretend that this is not something that you wrote, that you have no attachment to this whatsoever. You don't care what the person who wrote it thinks, and you have to edit as unemotionally and as unattached as you possibly can, because that is how you take a first very rough draft and you turn it into good copy, right? You do that by editing harshly, because it is in the editing where you lose the fluff. You use the looseless buffers and the junk that you don't need that's just cluttering up your copy. It's where you clarify meaning so that you tell a better story. You resonate better. That copy resonates more with your audience, right? You create clearer connections with your main points. You lose the words that you don't need that are just making your copy messy. So that's why it's so important to take that time away and to understand that you need to look at this with an editor's eye and not with a creator's eye. All right, guys, so that is it. Those are the tactics to help you, or I would call them guiding principles, really, to help improve your copywriting, right? So stop relying so heavily on adjectives and on buzzwords. Make sure you are always serving your audience with everything that you create. You are thinking about how you are delivering value to them. You're always telling a story that connects to your larger brand vision, okay? Don't try so hard. Just start, and make sure that once you do start that you practice consistently, and don't get attached to your first draft. So hopefully that was helpful, you guys, for giving you some tips and tricks about how to improve your copy, and to also hopefully demonstrate why it is so important to get better at copywriting. Feel free to drop me a note if you've got questions on anything I talked about during today's session. Thank you very much to those who joined live. I will post up the link as soon as I end this session to the little freebie we have for today, which is that checklist to help you walk through and improve any piece of copy that you are creating. So I'll be back again next week, guys, with Talking Social. So I look forward to seeing you then, and enjoy your weekend.